And welcome everybody to the AV Exchange presented by Midwich. I'm your host, as always, Joe Dunbar. Stoked to be here Thursday, July 17th. We're pretty much at the halfway point, like for the year, basically, not just quarters and all that, but like we're cruising right through summer. We've got the team from Lenovo here today, so I'm always jazzed to talk to these guys. They've been on a couple times. It's a great crew, so I'll bring them in momentarily. Let me get the housekeeping stuff going, and we can dive into some of that before we get on with the show. So on the agenda, like I said, we've got the team from Lenovo, James and Mark are in the house. I think we'll see how this goes. I think the majority of the conversation is going to be around the core Gen 2. I certainly have a bunch of questions. There's a bunch I'd like to know about. I've been out for a minute now, so we'll get into that. We'll talk about BYOD versus BYOM and some schematics and what that looks like utilizing the core Gen 2. It would not be a technology discussion today if we didn't mention AI, so obligatory AI conversation in there. No, I'm kidding. We'll get into some real AI convo for sure. And the gift card raffle at the end, so stick around, and we're going to raffle off a $50 Amazon gift card as we do. I love to remind people, if you have questions, please bring them in. A question in the Q&A will earn you an extra entry into the raffle, a relevant question, I should say. I'm not falling for any tricks, but a good question will definitely get you extra points into the raffle. So please queue those up and get them ready for us. Housekeeping stuff real quick, which I already started to get into. Q&A for questions. It just helps me and makes my life easier manage the thing if we can keep the Q&A and questions in the Q&A section and use the chat for any kind of general discussion, where you're calling from, any Lenovo experience. I'd love to hear about that stuff. I believe the chat's open, so go ahead and use that there. I do launch an awareness poll, which I'm going to go ahead and launch real quick. Really, we just want to know like how familiar you are with Lenovo and the team over there. Is this new to you? Is this advanced? Can we get into advanced conversation because it's not new to you, those types of things, and where you are in the channel. We've got a lot of folks that join these calls. Tends to primarily be systems integrators with some end users sprinkled in, but there's everyone up and down the chain. If you're a consultant, whatever, go ahead and let us know so we can make sure that we speak your language and try not to talk above or below you or anything like that. So with all that said, let's go ahead and bring the team in. James, Mark from Lenovo, I appreciate you guys joining us. How are we doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Incidentally, you mentioned it's halfway time or whatever. It's a little just past halfway to 2050 from the year 2000. Sorry to
throw that at me, Mark. Oh my Lord! Now I'm like worried. Oh, yeah. I don't know why. Well, why don't we have you guys do some introductions? Mark, if you go ahead and introduce yourself for the team, we can get to know who we're talking to.
Sure. So I'm Mark Whittaker, worldwide technical consultant for the Smart Collaboration team here at Lenovo. But there's somebody far more important to us right here, right now with us, and that's James.
Mark, I don't know if that's true or not, but I introed myself first last time, so I wanted to give you the first shot this time. Joe, thanks so much for having us back. I am James McGuire. I'm the channel account manager covering North American distribution partners for Lenovo Smart Collab, which, in the eyes of everyone on the call today, is our specialized division for video collaboration and unified communications here at Lenovo.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys. Happy to have you. I believe I think I got this right. Mark is in Massachusetts, Boston area. We were kind of cheating in the beginning because I was trying to remember where Mark is based. And James, you're in Florida. Did I get that right?
I'm down here in Tampa. Yes, sir.
That's right. Staying cool, I hope. I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, I'm just looking at the results of the poll as it typically goes, but not always. We are dealing with folks who are somewhat to very familiar with Lenovo and mostly systems integrators and some other folks kind of mixed in. So channel stuff, we can have channel conversations and kind of keep it that way. I get worried about getting too deep into the weeds, but frankly, that's kind of where I like to be, and this is a great place for that. So let's dive in, you guys, to the content and kind of get into some things. James, James, Mark, I don't know which you guys wants to kick us off, but I think if you guys were talking, let's start with a brief overview, and then we can kind of get into the guts.
Yeah, that sounds great, Joe. And the last call that we were on, where we jumped on here, we were very high level. So we are going to get a little more onto the technical side of things. But let's start with just a quick recap of what the ThinkSmart portfolio looks like today. A reminder for everybody, we have been in this space for almost 8 years now, started with a single product called the ThinkSmart Hub 500. We've expanded our portfolio pretty substantially over almost the last decade here. We now have room solution offerings from everything from small huddle personal rooms all the way up to auditorium-sized facilities using our core and controller technology. And we'll really be focusing in on our core and controller technology today and talk about those expandable room solutions and using Lenovo as your room compute. Mark, anything to add here before I jump in and we talk a little bit about AI?
So I could add all kinds of crazy stuff, but I think jumping right into it seems to be the correct direction here.
Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes here. AI optimized meetings with Lenovo. Both Microsoft Teams and Zoom have really embraced AI in some capacity for years, but the resource demands from both the room compute are growing exponentially as these platforms add new features. A couple I'd like to call out: Intelligent Director, generalized speaker tracking that's been around for a while, whiteboard awareness, and live transcription have really been kind of staples of video conferencing for, again, the past couple of years. But we're adding in some additional AI-powered functionality today, specifically with Copilot around AI-assisted room reservation, intelligent meeting recap, and Copilot-powered workplace space optimization. I do have a little infographic here on the bottom left that kind of calls out how we have developed some of our chipset with AI in mind. And I'm just going to call out that second line from the top there. The Lenovo ThinkSmart Core Gen 2 is the first ever AI optimized room compute for video conferencing. So Mark, not sure if you have any thoughts here, or Joe, any context to add.
So
go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, you go ahead, Joe. You go ahead.
I was just going to say how excited I was to that we're kind of seeing some focus on this. I know when we're working with our integration partners and even the end users as well, and we're talking about speccing hardware and what's the appropriate this and that, we can kind of get caught up sometimes looking at room compute solutions that have the juice to run all the new features and functionality that are coming with Teams, Zooms, and the other platforms as well. So this is a huge thing for me. I'm super glad to see it. I can't wait to dive in and look at a little bit of the specs. But Mark, go ahead. I'll let you jump.
All right. So I was actually going to say something along those same lines, but somebody you might the way that rooms have been designed over the course of years has been, let's worry about features of the camera, let's worry about features of the audio system, let's put the microphone in the ceiling instead of on the tables. And very frequently the codec in years past, nowadays it's the compute that's been driving the conferencing application. It's not been an afterthought, but it's almost been an afterthought. And why would you actually want to worry about that? Well, times have changed. AI is now becoming such an integral part of what both of these platforms have to offer that you actually almost need to take a step back and start considering that compute. And to that end, as James mentioned, we're the first AI optimized in-room compute for video conferencing. And that features our NPU. Our NPU, by the way, quick trivia point, NPU stands for Neural Processing Unit. And why that might make a difference to you we'll just talk about Teams for just a second. What can you do on Teams everything's in the cloud? What does Teams actually have to do with anything with the compute? And I would argue with you very quickly that really what's happening there, and this is a Mark Whittaker opinion, not necessarily an industry opinion, but what's happening is I think that there's so much stuff that's trying to happen in the cloud that it's going to get faster, better, and stronger when it gets pushed back to the edge. So take, for example, some of the greatest and latest features of the Microsoft Copilot stack, which would be things like your translation capabilities and your live captioning capabilities. Well, in a Teams environment, that has to go out to the cloud and come back again. So that's going to necessarily mean there's a delay associated with that. There's some latency associated with it. And having that ability to process those type of workloads on our compute makes us a prime example of why you would want to consider the compute at the same level you would consider all the nifty features of your camera and the audio system. It's because we can handle those workloads. And when that does get pushed back to the edge and onto our compute, we're ready for that power. We have the horsepower. We can just take those applications, throttle them, and make it work just right all the time.
Yeah, Mark, and a great point to make there, because it's so important to have that 24/7 uptime in those conference room spaces. And that is definitely something that was in mind when we designed the Core Gen 2. So let's go ahead and move over and talk a little bit about the Core Gen 2, if you don't mind, Joe.
James, I'm actually gonna. I got too much going on to get it into the screen here, whatever. But we had a question. People just want to know: are you guys working with Microsoft and Zoom to get their latest specs? Are you guys pulling these sorts of things and building around them? Are you trying to build in for? I don't want to say future proof, because that's sort of a misnomer. But are you working to make something that's more advanced than what's currently required, or like what does that partnership look like for you guys to make sure that you're building something that can support these platforms?
We're definitely going to talk a little bit more about the specs that are available today and what might be needed for individual use cases and different room types. But Mark, I'll let you comment on that one too.
Sure thing. So frankly, our design process definitively very much involves discussions with both Teams and Zoom, and to a certain extent, Google Meet, but that's not really what we're talking about today. But we definitely look at what they're doing and what their specs are for not just today, not just tomorrow, but for the next 3 to 5 years. And then some, even in many cases. So for instance, with this NPU is a great example. We went to Microsoft and said, okay, well, how much power on an NPU might you need? And they said, well, we don't use an NPU. And we said, you don't use an NPU today. If you were going to use one, when you start to use one or require one, how much power do you think you'll need? And they said, oh, I don't know, X amount. And we said, you know what? Let's more than double that. So we actually put in 250% of what we were told, just to make sure that when those platform companies come back to us and say, just kidding, we need 50% more, we're not just covered, we're covered and then some. So that way, when they add on to it a year or two later, we're covered. So it's definitely future spec'd out to handle that. And getting at the root of your question, we absolutely do involve both Zoom and Teams into our design process.
I assume as much, being that Lenovo is such a huge partner for both of those companies and us as well, just a big company with a big presence, but I hate to assume things. So I appreciate the clarifications. I do see a question I want to just address real quick. Jim, I know you're asking about specific processors and stuff, and I know we are going to dive into that. So hang on to it, and we will go ahead and cover that when the topic comes up. But James, let's dive into the Core Gen 2, man. I mean, this is what I'm here for. So this is what I'm excited about. Let's take a look.
Awesome. Let's do it. So 2 more slides and then we'll talk about processors. But just some general information about the Lenovo Core Gen 2. And for those of our partners that are on the call today that are not familiar with this device, the Lenovo Core has really become kind of the standard for in-room video conferencing computes today. We have a ton of alliance partnerships in the channel. We serve as the OEM manufacturer for many of your favorite peripheral companies that are out there today as well. But really what this is it's the room compute designed for 24/7, 365 use, ultra quiet fans. We know that just the sound of the fan can affect the actual mic pickup in those rooms. So that's all considered as we design and build these things. It is the first ever PC for video conferencing that is designed for AI functionality with Copilot, as we mentioned on the last slide. And it's also the first ever MTR certified room device that also has BYOD, BYOM on it. Ideal solution for customers that are looking to build out customized room solutions. They have cameras, mics, and speakers in mind that they know they like and want to use, and just want to get the compute power of Lenovo to drive those endpoint peripherals. Also a great solution for customers that are just trying to upgrade their integrated rooms and don't specifically want to do a full rip and replace for those mics and speakers that are in the ceiling or cameras that are mounted to the wall. And we know we have a lot of customers that are out there today that still have Win 10 devices that are in their rooms. This is a great opportunity to upgrade to a Windows 11 device. A lot of people don't realize that These room computes have the exact same life cycle and refresh cycle as a standard PC does, which is really about 3 to 5 years. And then you're kind of gapping out of what is still relevant at that point in time. And a lot of these rooms that were deployed post-COVID were deployed in 2020, 2021, 2022, and are starting to hit the end of those life cycles. So again, if you want to replace just your compute module without having to replace everything in the room, is a great option to use the core controller to do so. Mark, anything else you want to add there, Joe?
So yeah, you mentioned the quiet design. All of our devices, and we might actually get into this a little bit more on another slide, but I'm jumping the gun. But all of our devices are built from the ground up, which is to say we're not just taking a PC. Obviously, Lenovo makes all kinds of different PCs. We're not just taking some random PC off the shelf and just slapping a Teams or a Zoom image on it. What we're doing is we're designing from the ground up. So we have that enhanced thermal design. And you said specifically the fan noise. You were talking about the fan noise, James. The fan noise of our compute is something like 26 dB A-weighted. Now, I don't know if anybody has been around a 26 dB A-weighted loud device, but I'll give you a hint. You probably wouldn't hear it. So it's one of those things that, like, the average conference room noise floor is something like 45 or 50 dB. A-weighted, and so it just tucks into the noise floor and you don't hear it ever. So it comes out of our purpose-built design, which then also goes into reliability. Our reliability is one of our strongest suits. And James, you said 24/7, we got to make sure these things are up and running, and our reliability is unmatched. It's unrivaled. We really want to make sure that when we build these devices, they're tanks. They're not going to break.
I love that you're talking about it being purpose built, and that's the language I'm hearing from you guys, and the language we use when we talk about this is that is an important thing. This isn't a computer that was grabbed off the shelf and it's got an i5 in it or whatever, and let's throw an image on it. It was made specifically for this. I'm just such a proponent of like the right tool for the job when you can get it. I mean, there's times where you have to make do with what you can, but these are not the types of situations where you want to have to do that sort of thing. So a purpose built product is in itself already better than the competition in the sense that it's made specifically to do the task at hand. Guys, we have a couple questions piling up. I want to encourage everybody to keep them coming. I want to dive into two of them real quick, and I think knowing what I know about this deck, one of them is going to lead us quite nicely into the next segment. So let's start with my buddy Patrick. Patrick just wants to know, is the Core Gen 2 TAA compliant? It's a good one.
It is not as of now. So a tidbit there, we have recently, and by recently, I mean as of yesterday, have began moving our manufacturing facilities to a country that we could potentially create some TAA compliant SKUs for. So I wouldn't say that it's not on the horizon. It is something that we haven't particularly spent a lot of time building out yet, but we do have the potential to do that in the future. One of the great things about Lenovo as well is that we have the ability to build custom to order compute devices. So for large end users that need TAA compliant computes, we won't have them directly off the shelf, but it's definitely something that we can build. So please feel free to bring that to us and we'll see if we can work on it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I know it's something that comes up, often enough, and there is requirements for, and when again, like purpose-built tool, like they want that. So that's a great question, Patrick. I appreciate that one coming in. Steven has a question. It's a little wordy, so I can't get it up on the screen, and I want to try and get this right. So Steven, I hope I'm doing you justice here. In other Lenovo deployments, Steven has had the need for a flush mounted controller in the wall, which I have seen a fair amount of. I know there are some Lenovo controller options. In Steven's case, looking for a flush mounted option, they've used a wall box and a Logitech Tap IP, as that's worked out quite well before. So we're just wondering, compatibility. Is this still a situation where we kind of mix and match those brands? And I think it leads us right into what are our Lenovo options for controllers and how can we apply those?
Yeah, let's pop over to the controller slide here.
Yeah.
I don't believe we have a flush mount options out there today. I saw, Mark, it looked like you had some gears turning over there. I don't know if you had a comment on this before I say anything.
So I would love the opportunity to chat with you about the flush mount stuff. I'm sorry, I forget your name already because
I can make a note to make that happen. Go ahead.
But right now, flush mount is problematic with our current controllers, and I can get into why, but it's just not a thing right now. Both of our controllers do have, well, at least our IP controller does have the ability to wall mount, but it is not flush mounted. So that's just that, I guess.
Good to know. Well, let's take a look at the controller. I can connect you with Steven after the fact, so you guys can get in the particulars, but let's look at what the controller options are and how we can certainly apply those.
Yeah, great. So we're really just going to focus on the IP controller today. We do have a USB version. I would say 80% or more of our business today has moved over to the IP version. It's only a couple $100 more expensive than the USB, and really the functionality that you get out of it is well worth the money. As Mark mentioned, IP version is absolutely wall mountable where the USB is not. One of the biggest benefits is the cable routing of the IP controller. You have up to 100 meters of cable routing, so you can pretty much place that IP controller anywhere in the room you could possibly want to. Our USB version, it does have a signal booster in the middle of it. So for our customers that are running through conduit, it can become a little bit of a challenge sometimes to fit that through conduit that's too small. But really, the big upgrade version of the IP controller is that you have your HDMI ingest at the controller. Instead of having to run that cabling all the way back to wherever the compute is mounted in that room, you can just have a little 3-foot cable that comes off of the controller that usually sits in the middle of the conference table and be able to connect your laptop and share content that way. So one of the things that I don't think we call out often enough, though, is that both of these devices have present sense technology, which means that you walk into the room and all of the devices that you need to run your meeting will actually turn on for you. So for our customers that are focused on sustainability and energy savings, as long as you have it set up properly, it'll actually put this entire room into a sleep mode. And then once you walk in there, it'll boot it all on for you, which is pretty neat. And I don't think something that our competitors have today.
Cool. I do got a couple questions, Roland. Mark, anything you want to add to this before we look at those?
If you did want to do, if for whatever reason you are just absolutely, you must use the USB controller and it has to go through conduit, it requires a 2-inch conduit, which is why we say just go to the IP controller at that point in time, because 2-inch conduit is very large for conduit runs in conference spaces. That's all.
That leads into questions perfectly. Ian wanted to know if the USB controller is a fixed USB connection on the controller end, or is it a disconnectable cable? Is it, you say there's a booster built in, so is it a proprietary something or another? What is that like?
Sure. So it does disconnect at the controller side. It is just a USB-C connection. Curiously, it is a USB-C 2 connection, not 3.2, but USB 2 connection. Sure. So you do have the ability to extend that, and we were doing that for probably a year or so before we came out with the IP controller. So it is extendable, but it's kind of at that point in time, once you buy an extender for it, it's a lot easier to just use the IP controller, more cost effective as well. The other, as James was also mentioning, and I should have mentioned this prior to when I was talking last, the HDMI ingest that's on the actual IP controller, you don't have to use that. That's actually, it's easiest to think of that as an extension of the port that's on the core. So in the event that you had like an integrated system with an HDMI switch and the whole 9 yards, you could just take an HDMI out and plug it directly into the core and just treat this connection like it doesn't exist. And it'll work beautifully that way as well.
Oh, cool. I kind of want to dive into the functionality, but I know we're going to talk about BYOD, BYOM and content ingest a little bit. So there are some questions stacking up to that regard, but I'm going to hold on to those for a second until we get to those topics. So folks, if you got them, go ahead and submit them and we'll bring them up when the time is right. But earlier, I know a couple folks, I think Jim and some other folks wanted to know about the specifications available on the compute. So I think maybe let's dive in and take a look at that, and then we can come look at the BYOD, BYOM stuff.
Yeah, it seems like we have the questions stacking up in the right order here. So let's go ahead and answer the first round, and then we'll get to the next one. So, compute specs that are available today. Again, this goes back to the processing and resource demands that are required on these meeting room platforms as they become more advanced, we are now offering multiple compute configurations to meet different customers' needs. The first one you'll see here is our Ultra 5 16 gig compute. That is kind of going to be our workhorse compute for Microsoft Teams rooms. Great for usually what most people need for conferencing, single camera, limited audio requirements. Again, it'll fit great for most applications today. But for customers that are really looking to enable the multicam streaming, expanded audio for those auditoriums and large training rooms, the Ultra 7 32 gig compute really ensures that your in-room compute is able to handle the resource demands for those larger spaces while also allowing you to properly use the AI functionality that Teams and Zoom continue to roll out.
And you'll notice, you'll notice on the slide that there's two options for the MTR and one option for the Zoom. The reason why there's only one option for the Zoom that we have on the shelf is just because of the fact that that's the requirements that Zoom suggests, as James was suggesting. However, like James also suggested, you can custom order things, and you can custom order the Zoom version in the Ultra 5 with the 16 gigs of memory as well. So that is an option. It's just kind of a not off the shelf option. It would become a custom scenario.
All right. So at that point, we're probably asking somebody to say, hey, go ahead and take a look at the specifications that Zoom requires for what you're trying to achieve, and just make sure that you're getting enough power to do those things, and you're in good shape. In terms of the variants and availability, are they're all coming from the same place? We expect these things to be widely available in any trim and variant.
Yeah, that's a great question too, Joe. So the Ultra 5 16 is going to be kind of the one that we're going to have most stock of in North America on the shelf at any given time. After that, the Ultra 7 32 for Zoom is going to be what we have on the shelf, because that's going to be the most common variant that we have for Zoom. And again, that goes back to Zoom usually running Intelligent Director for any, high quality room solutions out there today. So those two will be typically stocked in quantity in the US and Canada. And then after that, we'll have limited numbers of the Ultra 7 32 for MTR on the shelf. It's going to be, I wouldn't say a custom order, but it's going to be probably a 2-week lead time to get those if you're trying to roll out 50 rooms at a time. We'll probably have 10 or 15 that are available in Geo. But for those larger opportunities for the Ultra 7 for Teams, going to take just a little bit of time to build those up. But yeah, the Ultra 5 MTR, we're going to have all day long, hundreds of units available in US.
Awesome. I know that came to a question earlier about what processors were available. So happy to see the new latest and greatest stuff out there. Can you, the process for ordering a customized one, is it as simple as getting a quote from us? And then you mentioned lead time about 2 weeks. Is that typical or what we would expect?
Yeah, it's really, so there's actually a double answer to this. So we already have some custom units skewed up internally at Lenovo that we just haven't particularly pushed live to the general distribution population, because we just are assuming that these aren't going to be extremely popular models, and we don't want to push stock into distribution that might sit there for weeks or months without selling. So we have a lot that are already built that just need to be enabled, and that we can build within a week or two and get them out the door. Most of the Ultra 7 or Ultra 5 models, not a problem there. Stuff that's really off the walls with super specific specifications that we might not have already built out, could take up to a month or something like that. But, process to start that, reach out to your Midwich sales team. They'll get in contact with us, and we'll provide correct information and timelines and see if it's something that the end user partner is willing to wait on.
Awesome. Yeah, no promises on any timelines. We just kind of want to set some general standards and expectations. So fantastic info. We had a couple questions regarding BYOD and BYOM, and I think we're moving into that next. So if you guys are ready for it, I'd say let's dive into that topic. And folks, if you've got more questions, please throw them in the Q&A for us, and we'll keep them coming.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll move over to BYOM then. And This is really one of the most exciting things that's part of the Core Gen 2, in my opinion. And for years and years, we have heard customers asking about platform interoperability. And we really believe that this is a huge step in the right direction for that, possibly the closest that we're going to get. We'll see what happens as far as these platforms go over the next few years. But one of our most exciting innovations yet, the Core Gen 2 does accommodate BYOM and BYOD on a certified MTR and Zoom room compute. Perfect for customers that want a native Teams room environment, that one-touch to join functionality with the occasional third-party meeting. We know that even customers or end users that are standardized on Teams, 5% of the time are going to have some, executive that refuses to move off of WebEx, or have one of their customers come in and want to use that room using their own meeting room platform. What this allows you to do is connect your own personal laptop via USB-C to the Core Gen 2 that is in that room, and take control over the connected camera, mics, and speakers that are connected to that compute, and run them from your own laptop. So something really cool that nobody else has done yet, and that we're already seeing a lot of interest around today.
This is something that comes up in almost every conference room conversation I have, classrooms or whatever it may be. Everybody will design a system and it's based in a certain environment, but they need the flexibility for X, Y, and Z reasons to get into another platform, either regularly or from time to time or whatever. Right now, there are tons of third-party solutions out there that are additional pieces that you can introduce into a system to do, USB host switching, and allow you to switch your USB peripherals between two host devices, which is a whole, that's a mountain in itself. But what you guys have done here is built that functionality into the host device, into the native host device, I guess I would say, and given folks the ability to add a second host device. And there's a couple of connection modes on screen here. Can we walk through these a little bit and talk about what it looks like from a user experience?
Yeah, and I'll let Mark talk about the user modes a little bit here. But one thing I do want to call out, because you mentioned it, most of those switcher devices that are available out there today, are, upwards of $1,000. And for us to have integrated that technology into this compute by default, while also reducing the need for connections, is absolutely huge for a lot of our end user customers today. So, yeah. Mark, I don't know if you want to touch a little bit on the different modes here.
Sure thing. So there's 4 modes, and one of them is disabled. So if you didn't want to have it at all, you don't have to enable it. But more importantly, something of note to everybody is that when you buy one of these, it ships in the box with the port disabled. So you have to go and turn it on. But when you go to turn it on, there's 3 different ways you can turn it on. One of them is to steal the peripherals only, and that's what you see in mode 2, where literally all you're doing is just taking the peripherals away from the PC and bringing it to your laptop. Mode 2, that was mode 2. Mode 3 is display only. And that is, I'm just presenting my laptop to the meeting or to the system. It doesn't have to be in a meeting. And in that case, it's just like an HDMI ingest, except it's done on USB-C rather than HDMI. And I know somewhere out there's a question that just fired across Joe's desk that said, well, can I extend across both displays? No, it's like I said, it's just like an HDMI ingest where it's just one display. That's all there is. And then finally, you have mode 4 with the full BYOM, where it's mode 2 and 3 put together, where you're not just presenting, you're also stealing the peripherals. This is the mode that we see most people use. And frankly, it's just a great way to have like James suggested, that third-party meeting, that random go-to meeting that pops up in everybody's calendar that, where did this come from? Oh, it's not a Teams meeting. What do I do? Well, you just pop it into BYO mode and you're done. One thing of note about this all, though, and we talked about those third-party host switchers. What happens in those is that you're stealing away the peripherals, right? So those peripherals are no longer connected in any real way to the core compute at that point in time, whether that's a core or somebody else's product. And that tends to throw errors, not just on devices, but also into things like the Microsoft Pro portal or perhaps the Zoom Cloud portal. It throws errors that way. What we've also done with our built-in BYO feature is we created a virtual driver that basically makes it like they're never disconnected. So those errors aren't going to get thrown every time you go into a BYO function anymore. which is extraordinarily valuable to any IT administrator that might want to actually not have to chase down problems that aren't actually problems, but something built in by design.
You know, Mark, this is something that came up when I was at Microsoft's Converged Communications Bootcamp maybe a month and a half ago, 2 months ago.
Yep.
We were in Seattle talking about this, and the biggest complaint that some of the system administrators had was like, great, when you're using this host switching device, then I get errors and I'm getting alerts that like things are down when they're not really down or they're being utilized. So what an awesome consideration to have, so that these guys literally disabled alerts for these rooms because they for these specific errors that were thrown in these rooms because it wasn't real, and they couldn't tell when it was real or wasn't real. But then they're sitting there going, well, if it is a real instance, we don't know because we're not getting those because they're just inundated with those types of things. So what an awesome consideration to make. Can we talk a little bit about the cabling here? So you talk about all this happening over a USB-C cable. Depending on the modes here, I see in the slide, there's like a couple of cables in each one. There's a call out for an HDMI cable and a BYOM cable, which I'm assuming is the USB-C 3.x cable.
Yeah. So what's going on with that? It's 3.2, full blown 3.2, super speed, 10 gigs, I think it is. But you need that full bandwidth in order to be able to properly steal the peripherals and send the content. To that end, what a lot of these things are kind of showing is that if you wanted to actually display for instance, in mode 2, you're just stealing the peripherals. You still need to present your laptop, so you have to hook up the HDMI cable as well. Versus in mode 3, where you're just presenting, now it's showing you have the option to present via HDMI in or via the USB-C. And again, another quick question that going to pop up in your chat real quick. It's going to say, okay, well, are they auto switched? Which one has the priority? The USB-C has priority over the HDMI. So if they're both plugged into two different computers, you'll see the USB-C, not the HDMI. Unplug the USB-C and the HDMI will pop up. So that's kind of cool. And then when you're stealing the peripherals and presenting in mode 4, you have the option to either just go that route or to plug in an HDMI cable. It does suggest that there's a 5-meter cable, only works in mode 2. Lenovo has 2 lengths of cables for our BYO cable. There's a 3-meter and a 5-meter. 5-meter will only work in mode 2. You require the 3-meter to work in mode 3 or mode 4. And before you say the next question that popped up on your screen while I was saying that, it was saying 3 meters, that's it. There are third-party cables we've tested and have verified actually work that can go up to 15 meters. And as we speak, I am working with all kinds of different extender manufacturers, including one you and I were talking about earlier before we hopped on here. I'm working with all kinds of different extender manufacturers to get a system actually working correctly. And we're working through that process. Unfortunately, it's just going to take a little time because of, there's some technical reasons why. If you really want to get into it, I'll be happy to get into it with you. But ultimately, it would probably put most of you to sleep right now.
Is that our friends over at InnoGenny that you're talking about?
That is precisely correct. I was chatting with my good buddies over there, including Jerome up in Canada, and I was chatting with obviously with oh geez, now I feel like an idiot because I can't remember his name.
I work with Ryan quite a bit over there.
Yes,
yeah, they're a great team. We love the folks at InnoGenny. So talking about cables, this is a great question. You guys are working. You said you've tested some cables and verified that work. Where would an integration partner find this verifiable information to know what would work, what wouldn't work? Could they reach out to us? Is that something that's available online, or where would they?
Sure. So there's a great resource for anybody who's interested in knowing more about our products. It's smartcollab.us. I don't know if anybody's had the distinct pleasure of looking at the Lenovo.com website for anything having to do with smart collaboration, but just stop. You're wasting your time. So we got annoyed by that. We actually ended up building our own website because we thought it would be easier. We didn't realize how much work it would be updating it constantly, but it is still easier for you to find all the information. So if you go to smartcollab.us and scroll down on the main page, you'll see a big section about Core Gen 2. And right in that section, there is a little blurb about USB-C cables that we've tested and known work.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I use that website frequently. I was assuming that was going to be the answer, but I hate to assume things. I went ahead and dropped a link in the chat. So go ahead and click that, bookmark it, save it. Not just for this question, but honestly, technical information regarding the Lenovo UC products. Mark, James, you guys have done a great job keeping it relevant information available on that website. And, just kind of the state of the world today. People want customer facing stuff to look very sleek and have a certain kind of look and feel to it. And us folks on the technical side of things need information that is not super sexy looking. It's hard to make it super appealing, right, for folks who aren't into it. So not uncommon to have another place to go to get those resources. So now y'all know, you heard it here on the AV Exchange. Can we talk a little bit about how, if at all, the BYOD, BYOM conversation connects to the HDMI ingest on the controller with the IP controller, right? Because that brings an HDMI ingest in there. Do those two things play together? Does that make that null and void? What is that relationship like?
So as I was mentioning, when you're in, for instance, mode 2, where you need to present to the HDMI in order to get your laptop up, you could still use the HDMI ingest on the IP controller, and that's not an issue. Same general idea with mode 3. You then have the option to do the HDMI ingest on the controller, or you could use a USB-C. On mode 4, you don't need to use the HDMI at all. You could just go straight USB. But if you wanted to do it, you could still present across HDMI. It wouldn't be in BYO mode at that point in time because the USB-C, as I mentioned, overrides the HDMI. So it would be for, like, we're having a regular meeting. My computer doesn't have a USB-C port, which I don't know why that still exists, but it does. If your computer doesn't have that USB-C port and you just want to present, we still have that capability. However, in BYO mode, you do have to use that direct connect back to the core via USB-C in order to make it go.
Got it. I appreciate that. And just for clarification, because it did come up earlier and I wanted to make sure we get into the conversation, the HDMI ingest on the IP controller and the HDMI ingest on the core, it's like an extension of the core HDMI ingest, right? So you can't use them concurrently to bring in two sources or something like that?
Not at the same time. As I was mentioning, you could actually go and plug into both, and it will show just the USB-C. And then as you disconnect the USB-C, it will switch over automatically to the HDMI. But the second you plug that USB-C back in, it will switch back to the USB-C.
Awesome. So let's say for a second I'm in Teams or Zoom or whatever. Like, what does my user experience look like for this? Can we, talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Mark, let me kick over to the next slide here real quick and just kind of show what the startup process looks like. And I'll let you do the technical deep dive here, but just quick slide shows how easy it is to use the BYOM functionality. As soon as you connect that USB-C cable to your own laptop, you will get this notification on your controller for that room to ask you if you would like to go into BYOM mode or not. You don't have to do anything else on your PC or with the room settings. You can simply hit yes, or as you can see here, it'll auto switch within 20 seconds from when that connection is made. So, Mark, I don't know if you want to elaborate here.
Yeah, absolutely. So as it suggests also down the bottom that if you plugged in the USB-C and you didn't want to go into BYO mode, you can hit cancel, and the USB-C is just a presentation input at that point in time, assuming you have the mode set up correctly. As well, I had another good point that for whatever reason escaped me, and I'm feeling like an idiot again.
Yeah, that's all right. It makes me feel like I'm not alone, man. So all to say, I'm a user. I sit down. This is not a very technical experience, right? I know I want to present from my laptop or connect with my laptop. I plug it in. I'm prompted to make a move or not make a move. It's very easy and straightforward. So that kind of explains that for me a little bit. This is a controller interface that comes up, and you said if I click, so if I just want to do a direct presentation or content ingest, I can click cancel and it will remain in that functionality.
Correct. I remembered what I was going to say, thankfully. That is that in the event that you're in a Teams meeting and you plug in the USB-C, the BYO option won't actually engage because it recognizes you're in a Teams meeting already. You need the peripherals for said Teams meeting, so it won't try to steal them. So once you're in a Teams meeting, that USB-C is literally just a presentation input.
Awesome.
But yes, you're absolutely right with what you had said just a minute ago.
Cool. Well, I mean, this all presents for like, it makes for like a very straightforward, very easy user experience. We're the technical folks, obviously, and the users are often not. It's not their job to be. They have more important things to do. So I'm just happy to see that this is a nice, easy, straightforward interaction that they're going to have. And in the details, in the weeds, we are here, addressing kind of how it's going to work in these different scenarios and stuff. It's information you're not really going to find necessarily spelled out in material somewhere. So having these conversations, that's why we're here. That's what really helps. So we've got about 14 minutes or so before we hit the top of the hour. And I want to make sure we finish on time. I know you guys have a couple other things you want to get into, so we'll go ahead and do that. But I just want to remind folks, if you've got any questions for the squad, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A section, and I will make sure that we get them in before the end of the call here, and we will do the gift card raffle at the end. But I know, James, we talked about including a couple things. I know Core Gen 2, you guys added the cable management. So I think that's something we should probably take a peek at, and then a couple other items on our way out here.
Yeah, that sounds good, Joe. And we've always had probably one of the better cable management solutions in the Teams and Zoom room compute space, but we've upgraded this substantially as well with the Core Gen 2, along with all the other great kind of more glamorous upgrades that we've made to the core compute and added all of this additional functionality. I mean, the cable management is probably a little bit overlooked sometimes, but for our customers that are doing AV installs on a regular basis, I think it's very apparent how important cable management is. And the Core Gen 2 does have some of the most versatile cable management options on the market today. You'll see there's 3 options that are out there for the Core Gen 2. You have option 1 that does have the removable cable lid. Now, it is lockable as well. One of the things that we heard from the Core Gen 1, though, is that it was actually a fixed lid. So you could swing it open and you could do your, plug in your cables and do your cable management. You could close it and you could lock it, but you couldn't fully remove that hinged lid that was on there. And when that thing is already mounted to a wall behind a display or in a small credenza, it's pretty difficult to have that lid open and plug stuff in. So we decided to make that fully removable. So you could take that whole cover off, do your cabling, and then replace it and screw it down so that nobody goes in there and pulls it out. Now, the second option for customers that are working in really, really tight spaces, we now allow you to fully remove the cable management from this PC. And the cool thing about this is that it really shows just how small the form factor of this compute is. I mean, you look at this compute, it's already pretty small and able to go into small spaces. But when you take off that cable management, you're removing 30% of the size of this compute in those spaces. So for customers that are working in those really, really tight spaces, or that just don't have the necessity to lock down the cabling in those rooms, you can absolutely fully pull it off. And then the last thing that we've done is we've now included a VESA-mounted power cage with the core compute mounting technology. So in the past, I think a lot of the time we're trying to zip tie on that AC adapter somewhere around where the compute is. This removes the need to do that. You already have somewhere to slide in that AC adapter. So you have all of your cables plugged in, locked into the back of the compute, and you have a dedicated slot to put your AC adapter and power for this compute device. So keeps all the cables super tidy with this, which, again, is pretty important when you're the one that's running, 15 or 20 rooms at a time.
Definitely. Mark, do you want to add anything to this? I love the power cage is probably my favorite thing. I hate having to figure out what I'm going to do with the brick and the transformer. So probably not the first thing on everybody's list about but certainly one of my features. I don't know if you had anything you'd like to add.
So to tell you the truth, so I usually get things into my lab environment here, and the first thing that goes is the cable management systems and all the VESA mounting hardware. So I'd actually never seen that set up just because I'm weird like that until I got to Infocom. And I got to Infocom and basically mounted one on the wall, and I was like, whoa, this is incredible. Somebody actually thought about this. And it felt weird for me to say that to myself because it's like, I should know this. Oh, well.
No, man. Hey, we all got to learn at some point, but it is one of those things that, you just said it. Somebody thought about this. And when you're in the field doing an installation, man, what a breath of fresh air to be putting something together and go, wow, this is well thought out, well designed for the purpose. And that's one of those little things that very nice to have. Could you get by without it? Can you figure out something else to do? Sure. We've all been doing that for a long time, but it's a nice little accessory that'll make your install look a lot cleaner, go a lot smoother, and keeps it tidy. So I'm a big fan of that. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes left here. I got one question from Josh about back to kind of the BYOD thing that he meant to ask and we didn't get into, and I want to make sure we touch on while we're still on the Core Gen 2. And Josh wants to know if the USB-C from the Core Gen 2 provides charging power back to the computer that's plugged into it.
Yes, it does. It's not intended to be for the we'll say it's not intended to charge up your laptop. So, for instance, you walk into a meeting and you plug it in. It's not going to take your battery from 0 to 100 across the course of your meeting. However, what it will do is that it's because it's 45 watts. It's not some huge power supply, but it will prevent your battery from draining during the process of the meeting. So like I said, it's intended to basically provide that, we'll call it a trickle charge, to be able to prevent your battery from dying during the meeting, but it's not intended to, like I said, power your battery for the next 8 hours.
Oh, cool, man. I was expecting, no, we can't do that. So that's a great, happy surprise to get. And I think I certainly understand the use case there, right? Like I wouldn't just sit down and if I'm working on my computer, grab that cable as a charging cable, that clearly goes to the system. So that makes sense. Do you know, I'm sorry if you mentioned it, is there X amount of power that comes out of that? How many watts?
45 watts.
Okay. Got it. Enough to keep us alive throughout, which would be the other thing. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, sorry, go ahead.
And frankly, it can also charge a phone, but just beware because if you plug your phone in, it's going to try to steal the peripherals and potentially show up on the display.
We have seen, more solutions that are coming out in the conferencing space now that are able to connect to phones, tablets, mobile devices, and things like that for limited functionality. It'll do this, it'll do that. It's not designed for the whole thing, but I mean, we can clearly see it's not going to be long probably until I walk in and I can run an MTR meeting from my phone instead of needing to bring a laptop or my iPad or something like that. So that, not the use case today, but I won't be surprised if it's one we see kind of coming down the road pretty soon here.
Yeah.
Guys, we have a couple minutes left. James, I know there's a couple other things we wanted to touch on the way out. I'll hand it over to you to wrap up the deck here.
Yeah, let's hit one more technical slide, and then we'll leave you with a couple of resources for our partners out there today. So the last thing on the product side that I want to talk about is actually on the software side of things, which is our cloud-based management platform called ThinkSmart Manager. Probably one of the most powerful tools that we have at Smart Collab today. It's a huge differentiator for us in the AV space. Really difficult to do this justice in a single slide. It really requires an in-person or live demo to see how it really works, but it allows you to get real-time monitoring of your rooms. It allows you to see, what your network usage is, connectivity issues, login errors, be able to troubleshoot those rooms that are not working properly before somebody walks in there and tries to have a meeting. Also gives you the ability to do full remote control over your connected room devices. So huge benefit for IT managers that are covering large networks. They might not be actually on site all the time, or they cover a facility in California and in Miami. Having that remote manageability makes all the difference in the world. It comes for a year for free with any of our compute solutions that are running Ultra 5 or Ultra 7 processors. So you get that for a year for free. If it works for you, great. You can upgrade to a longer lifespan after that, but you don't necessarily have to. And then the last part about this that I like to call out, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple things that Mark will add to, but it actually allows you to access these room computes, the Core Gen 2, at the BIOS level. So that basically means that you can reboot a frozen device without having to physically enter that room. So again, huge for customers that have completely locked up devices, frozen devices, devices that need to be completely restarted or shut down. You can absolutely do that without going in there and physically pressing that button or unplugging it and plugging it back in again.
That's huge. That's so huge, man.
That is absolutely huge, and I appreciate that more than you'll ever know, because it's, just as a tech guy around Lenovo, that saved me a bunch. And more importantly, there's a few really other good points about Think Smart Manager, and like James said, to really truly get it really does require a demo. So please reach out to James or to Joe and to let one of us know that you're interested in a demo, so that we could get that set up for you. But more importantly, there's a few slides back, we mentioned a 20-second countdown timer to go that will automatically launch BYO mode. You can adjust that timer in Think Smart Manager. So you can make it go down to 10 seconds or up to 30 seconds or whatever. It's variable, so you can do what you need to do for your situation. One other key thing about this is that I know somebody in some chat is saying, why would I use this as opposed to the Pro Portal? Pro Portal's great. Microsoft Pro Portal's great. And I agree with you. Microsoft Pro Portal is great. One of the biggest problems with Microsoft Pro Portal is that it doesn't give you access to the devices when you're in a meeting. Because it basically what happens is, getting into some computer geek talk, right? You have your layers of your OSI model, and it comes in at the application layer. And the application is tied up, so it can't access the system. We come in at the BIOS layer, which means that even when the application's being used, we can still have access to it. So if you have a conference room, hopefully your conference room is getting used something like 75% of the day, possibly even more, then the Pro Portal doesn't actually do anything for you for 75% of the day, which, it's not that it's a bad thing. Again, Pro Portal is great, but we give you access 100% of the time. So it's a beautiful little thing to consider when you're thinking about management tools.
Yeah, that's super nice. I mean, I've heard a lot of complaints about the Pro Portal. Everybody's got complaints about everything, but that's a really nice thing that you guys built in there. Great consideration, especially, often if you're doing some troubleshooting, it's not because it's an empty room. It's because something's going on in there right now. So you are very likely could be stuck in that situation. So that type of remote management and the deeper insights are certainly appreciated. Anything else as we wrap up here, guys, that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I'm going to skip through a couple of product slides here and just go right to the partner resources just to make sure that we call these out again before we finish up today.
Absolutely.
Again, huge thanks to all of our partners for joining. Thank you to the Midwich team for having us. We do have proof of concept units available for end user customer opportunities. So please reach out to your Midwich sales representative and get in touch with us so that we can get those in front of your customers and partners. Deal Reg that's out there today. Midwich also fantastic at helping out with this. Reach out to them. They can help you get the Deal Reg. We get those turned around usually within a day or so. So we're pretty quick on the draw for getting special pricing out there for customers. 3-year premier support warranty included by default for all of the technology that we've talked about today. No additional cost. You can have somebody come out on site and do troubleshooting and fix your devices if something does happen to happen to one of them. And then the one thing that Mark also called out that I will reiterate that Joe dropped in the chat earlier, smartcollab.us, probably the best technical resource that we have today. Mark and Joe that cover our coast-to-coast technical consultant team here in the U.S. do a fantastic job of updating that. Of course, we can always answer your questions too. If you just want to hang out and talk to one of us for 15 minutes about something off topic, we can do it. But if you just want to get an answer real quickly about something technical related, smartcollab.us is the place to go.
Poor Mark Whittaker has gotten so many emails from me with this question and then a follow-up going, Dad, just kidding. I found it here. I should have started there. He's definitely used to it. But to highlight the fact that it is a great resource, and you guys have done such a great job building that, since its inception. It really has become something that I go to frequently, and I find myself being able to solve my problem and find my answers right then and there, which is always, I would rather get to a quick, not that I don't love chatting with you guys, but I just want to get to my answer and stay in my flow. So I appreciate that resource. And I want to encourage our integrator friends on the call to not sleep on that. So I appreciate that. James, Mark, where are you guys going to be? Where can the people find you? We know you're on LinkedIn. Any events coming up or anything we need to know about before we get out of here?
Well, definitely give us an ad on LinkedIn. But we will be in person with the Midwich crew in October in Boston. I believe that Tech Connect is the nomenclature for it this year. So Mark is actually based in Boston, as you mentioned earlier. So I'm sure he'll be making a guest appearance. I will be there for absolutely sure. If you want to see this stuff in person and you're based in the Northeast, please come sign up, register, see us, see how it works, and come see all the rest of the awesome stuff that Midwich has to offer. Again, we are fully invested on the compute and controller technology this year. Come see what other great cameras, mics, and speakers that our partners in the Alliance channel manufacture and see how we can build out a holistic solution through Midwich today.
Awesome. I appreciate it so much, you guys. Mark and James from Lenovo, thank you for joining us. We'll let you guys go here. The last piece, you guys, I know we're running a little long. The conversation just got there. We got to do the raffle drawing, and the winner is Patrick Smith. So thank you, Patrick, and everybody for joining us, giving us your time this afternoon. We have Absent on next week, I believe. So go hit the registration and join us for that. Again, shout out to the team at Lenovo for joining us and you guys for giving us your time. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week on the AV Exchange.